Good afternoon, learners. Today we will be covering the 14th chapter in your syllabus, that is, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Well, learners, this is a picture of the famous American poet Robert Frost. Robert Frost, learners, was an American poet who depicted realistic New England life through language and situations familiar to the common man. He won 4 Pulitzer Prizes for his work and spoke at John F. Kennedy's 1961 inauguration. Robert Frost was an American poet and winner of 4 Pulitzer Prizes. Famous works include Fire and Ice, Mending Worlds, Birches, Out Out, Nothing Gold Can Stay, and Home Burial. His 1916 poem, The Road Not Taken, is often read at graduation ceremonies across the United States. Frost eventually became a poetic force and the unofficial poet laureate of the United States. Robert Frost wrote The Road Not Taken as a joke for a friend, the poet Edward Thomas. When they went walking together, Thomas was chronically indecisive about which road they ought to take and in retrospect often regretted that they should in fact have taken the other one. Soon after writing the poem in 1915, Forrest gripped to Thomas that he had read the poem to an audience of college students and that it had been taken pretty seriously. Frost creates a multiplicity of meanings in the poem, never quite allowing one to supersede the other. Even as The Road Not Taken describes how choices in life are inevitable. In the poem, learners, in the poem The Road Not Taken, the road symbolizes our life. The poet says that the path that we don't choose in our life is actually the road not taken. He describes his feelings about that choice that had left in the past. The path which we have chosen, learners, decides our future, our destination. The important message that the poet wants to give is that the choice that we make has an impact on our future. And if we make a wrong choice, we regret it, but cannot go back on it. So, we must be wise while making choices. Learners, The Road Not Taken begins with a dilemma, as many fairy tales do. Out walking, the speaker comes to a fork. Fork, learners, means a junction. Okay, a junction from where 2 roads start. So, out walking, the speaker comes to a fork, a juncture in the road, and has to decide which path to take. So, learners, this is a picture of a fork or a juncture. So, imagine the poet standing at the center and deciding which path to take. Imagine, learners, that you are there standing at the center. Which road will you take? So, the same dilemma was faced by the poet also. Learners, let's recite the poem. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both, and be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, and then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept thee first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Learners, let's go through lines 1 and 2. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. The poet, while travelling on foot in the woods, reaches a junction where two roads diverge. Immediately he realizes that as a traveller, travelling both the roads is impossible. Here, two roads are meant two ways of life. The woods are yellow, which means that it probably falls and the leaves are turning yellow. Frost uses one detail, the yellow leaves, and makes it a symbol for the entire forest. Defining the wood with one feature prefigures one of the essential ideas of the poem. The yellow leaves, learners, suggest that the poem is set in autumn, perhaps in a section of woods filled mostly with alder or birch trees. The leaves of both turn bright yellow in fall, distinguishing them from maple leaves which flare red and orange. Robert Frost would have known these woods were new, full of trees that had grown after older ones had been destroyed. One forest has replaced another, just as in the poem one choice will supersede or supplant another. The yellow leaves in the poem also evoke a sense of transience. Transience, learners, a sense of movement, a sense of transformation. Like one season will soon give away to another. So, the yellow leaves in the poem, they are a symbol of transformation, of transience, how one season transforms or changes into another. Learners, let's go through lines 3 and 5. And be one traveller, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. As it is possible, it is impossible to travel both the roads. So as you know that as it is impossible to travel both the roads, the poet stands there trying to choose which path he is going to take. However, the poet wants to go down both paths and is thinking about it hard. He is staring down at one road, trying to see where it goes. The small plants and greenery of the woods block his way. So as you know, the poet, he's standing at the center, he's deciding on which path to take. So he's trying to look and trying to analyze about making the move. He's trying to analyze which path or which road is he going to take. So he's trying to look down on one road, but the plants and the greenery, all of them, they are blocking his view. The speaker, the poet, briefly imagines staving off choices, he wishes he could travel both, wishing he could travel two paths at once without dividing or changing the self. The syntax, the meaning of the first stanza also mirrors the desire for simultaneity and parallelism. This means, learners, that the poet wants to travel both the roads at the same time. Okay, he doesn't want to give up one road for the other. He's thinking of traveling. He's thinking of traveling on both the roads. After peering down one road as far as he can see, the speaker chooses to take the other one, which he describes as the grassier one. Learners, let's go through lines 6 to 8. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Like in the previous lines, we have discussed that yes, the poet has finally made a choice to travel on the road which seems more grassy. Okay, so the phrase "as just as it fair" means that a poet wants to do something which is righteous and equal. The poet decides to check the other path because he found the other road to be less traveled and grassy one. Okay, so the poet decides to choose the grassier road which he thinks is less traveled. Learners, let's go through lines 9 to 8. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. After travelling through the road, he found that both the roads are equally travelled. First, he found the first road to be the more travelled one, but then he says that both the roads are equally travelled. Thus, in the line "as for that" refers to the path being less worn or the path which is less explored. Later in the poem, the speaker calls the road he chose less travelled, and it does initially strike him as slightly grassier, slightly less trafficked. As soon as he makes this claim, however, he doubles back, erasing the distinction even as he makes it. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. In this line, Forrest repeats that the two roads are comparable, observing this time that both the roads are equally untravelled, and both the roads are carpeted in the newly fallen yellow leaves. Learners, in the title and in the poem, you must have observed that the statement "the road not taken" is always there, and it gives a ghostly impression because it's hidden, but the reiteration, the repetition of this line is always there. According to the title, this poem is about absence. It is about what the poem never mentions. The choice the speaker did not make, which still haunts him. Again, however, Robert Frost refuses to allow the title to have a single meaning. The poem and the title, "The Road Not Taken," also evokes the idea of the road less travelled, the road most people did not take. The reader, learners, how do you relate with it? The reader cannot make out the difference and cannot make out whether the difference evoked in the last line is glorious or disappointing, or neither. What is clear is that the act of choosing creates division and averts dreams. All the differences that have been arisen and the loss of unity has come from the simple fact that choice is always and inexplicably inevitable. The self has been split. At the same time, the repetition of "I" recalls the idea of travelling two roads as one traveller. One "I" stands on each side of the line break, on which side of the verse turn. just as earlier when the speaker imagined being a single traveler, walking down both the roads at once. So the repetition of the pronoun I suggests that the poet is alone and he himself is, on his own. He's handling the dilemma of choosing the right path or the right road. Learners, let's go through lines 11 to 12. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden black. Here again, the poet found both the paths looking same. Perhaps he goes in the flashback. It was tough for him to recognize the real road, as in the morning he was the first person to walk on the road. He couldn't decide the right path, as no step had smashed the leaves on the roads to allow him to go for the right direction or to go for the right path. Learners, let's go through lines 13 to 15. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. The poet here saves the first road for another day. He knows how way leads to another, and then another until you end up very far from where you started. The poet here saves the first road for another day. Then in the third line, he doesn't think he will ever be able to come back and take the other path, as much as he wishes he could. I shall be telling this with a sigh. This line is an example of poet's failure in choosing the right path. The word sigh reflects that he is disappointed with the decision. Somewhere, ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less travelled. The poet accepts the fact that he is a failure in taking the right decision. Ages and ages is an example of alliteration, learners, which we will discuss later. So in this line, in these lines depict that the poet has chosen the road that is less travelled. And that has made all the difference. Learners, let's go through line 20. The poet took the path that no one else did. And that is what has made the difference in his life. And that actually made him successful. Okay, so the poet chose the road which was less travelled and which indeed and eventually made him more successful. However, a difference could mean success or utter failure. In the fourth stanza, we can see that the poet was talking about his past life. He's talking about nostalgia. Learners, talking about the two roads and the decision he made to choose the road. He's talking about this happily. From the last stanza, we can make out that he's happy with his decision. He's happy with the path that he chose. He's happy with the choices that he made. He's happy that he chose the career which was unexplored. Maybe he's brave, maybe he's coward, we don't know that. But from the last line, we can make out that he's happy. He's happy for the road that he chose, and that has made all the difference with others. Learners, you must know that this poem has a rhyme scheme, and the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AAB. The poet in the poem decided to seize the day and express himself as an individual by choosing the road that was less travelled by. Moreover, the narrator's decision to choose the less travelled path shows his courage. In terms of the beauty, both paths were equally fair. The narrator also distinguishes the path from another one after he has already selected one and travelled for many years through life. The road not taken, learners, you must know that this is one of the Frost's most beloved poems, and it is frequently studied in high school literature classes. Learners, now let's discuss some themes of the poem. So the first theme is choice. The road not taken centers on the concept of choice. The path that the speaker is walking on is splitting in two directions, and he has to decide which way to go. This path is not just in the woods, but also represents a decision in life. Sometimes, some things in life are changing and forcing him to make a choice. Yet, he has a really hard time deciding. One moment he thinks one way is better, the next both paths are about the same. Whether or not he has a reason why the choice he makes is better, he has to make it, and that choice changes his life. Learners, let's go through the other theme, and the other theme of the poem is dreams, hopes and plans. Choices like the choice, the road not taken, are linked to the future. The speaker of this poem realizes that his choice of path will change his life. But the tricky part about the nature of the future is that the speaker won't know how his decision will change his life until it has already changed. The speaker thinks of his lost opportunities as his choice takes him into one future and leaves another behind. The third theme is man and the natural world. Throughout the poem, throughout the road not taken, nature is used as a metaphor for the life of the speaker. The speaker contextualizes a major decision by writing about it as if it were something he encountered. While walking in a forest in the fall, the metaphor helps us to wrap our minds around the complexities of choice that will help us to decide the future. The poem also talks about exploration. Our speaker is out in the woods without a map, and he doesn't know which path to take. But instead of turning tail and running back to where he came from, he chooses a path and forges on, willing to face whatever challenges that path may lead him to. He is attracted to a path that might be less travelled, which suggests learners that he likes to go where few people have gone before. The road not taken embraces exploration, suggesting that the only way to see what's beyond the bend in the road is to keep walking. Learners, now what is the central message of the poem? The road not taken suddenly presents the speaker and the reader with a dilemma. There are two roads in an autumnal wood separating off, presumably the result of the one road splitting, and there's nothing else to do but to choose one of the roads and continue life's journey. So the poem stresses on moving forward and not stopping. Okay, so the poem focuses what, learners? Yes, that you must continue with your life's journey. You must move forward. Even if there are hindrances, there are difficulties, there are problems, please overcome that. Continue moving forward. Sometimes we are presented with different choices, And while making a choice, one is required to overcome the confusions in head and make a decision. Viewing a choice as a fork in a path, it becomes clear that we must choose one direction or another, but not both. Okay, so like we say that you must choose one path. You cannot sail in both the boats. Okay, you cannot be on two boats at one time. Okay, so you must choose your boat and you must choose the right path. Learners, in The Road Not Taken, Frost does not indicate whether the road he chose was the right one. Nonetheless, that is the way he is going now, and that the place he ends up, for better or for worse, was the result of his decision. So learners, through this poem, you must have full faith and confidence in your own decision. Even if it's for better or for worse, you must have faith and confidence in your decision. Learners, before proceeding forward with the video, let's take a short break. Thank you.
कोविड-19 यानी कोरोना वायरस देश एवं संपूर्ण विश्व में व्याप्त विषाणु जन्य समस्या। लाखों लोग इस संक्रमण की चपेट में। इसका निदान है जागरूकता के साथ हम और आप स्वयं। कोरोना वायरस के इस संक्रमण से संपूर्ण भारतवर्ष भी एक विकट स्वास्थ्य की परिस्थितियों से जूझ रहा है। भारत सरकार द्वारा गांवों से शहरों तक व्यापक जांच, उपचार और विभिन्न नैदानिक व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं, लेकिन अभी हमें करना है इससे बचाव। बचाव है आपस में 2 गज की दूरी रखें, मास्क जरूर लगाएं, हाथों को बार बार साबुन से धोएं और हाँ, आरोग्य सेतु ऐप पर लॉगिन अवश्य करें। घर पर रहें और NIOS की स्व अध्ययन सामग्री से पढ़ते रहें। आपके लिए PM ई-विद्या पर टीवी, रेडियो वाहिनी और मुक्त विद्या वाणी पर ऑडियो कार्यक्रमों का प्रसारण भी NIOS द्वारा किया जा रहा है। आपसे एक ही अनुरोध है, जब भी छींकें, मुंह और नाक को ढकना ना भूलें। भीड़ भाड़ में जाने से बचें और सामाजिक दूरी का पालन करें। और एक बात, जब तक वैक्सीन नहीं आती तब तक मास्क को ही वैक्सीन समझें। साफ रहें, स्वच्छ रहें और स्वस्थ रहें। 2 गज दूरी, मास्क है जरूरी। किसी भी आपदा की स्थिति में संपर्क करें टोल फ्री नंबर 1075 011 23978046। ईमेल करें ncov2019@gov.in।
प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो,
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने हम, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा और परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने हम, अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने हम, स्वयं बने हम,
Welcome back, learners. So before the break, we were discussing about the central message in the poem. So let me repeat that once more. The central message in the poem is that sometimes life gives us many choices to make. And while making a choice, one is required to make a decision. Viewing a choice as a fork in a path, it becomes clear that we must choose one direction or another, but not both. In the road not taken, Frost does not indicate whether the road he chose was the right one. Nonetheless, that is the way he's going now. And the place he ends up, for better or worse, was the result of his decision. So you must, like I was discussing before the break, that you must have full faith in your decision. Even if you regret it afterwards, but you must at least overcome the dilemma, the conflicts in your mind, and you must choose a path. This poem is not about taking the road less traveled. It is about individuality and uniqueness. Learners, you must remember, this is not about, taking the less explored career or the road which is less traveled or the path which is less traveled. This is about a person's individuality and a person's uniqueness. This poem is about the road taken, to be sure, as well the road not taken, not necessarily the road less traveled. Any person who has made a decisive choice will agree that it is human nature to contemplate the what if had you made a choice you did not make. So we all know, we all have this human nature to contemplate things. This pondering about the difference and this pondering about the different life one may have lived had they done something differently is central to the road not taken. So learners, what is the central idea? That, it's very natural to all of us. We all contemplate our decisions. So this contemplation, this dilemma, this conflict is the central theme and the central idea of the poem, The Road Not Taken. The speaker declares himself happy in the end because he's happy with the path he chose, and because it has more grass and not many folks that have been written in the poem. He's very happy. Like in the last stanza, we can make out that the poet is very happy with the choice that he makes. Anyways, he does return, and he tries to return one day and try to walk on the original road once again. So he's happy, but he contemplates that one day he might return on the path on which he did not travel. Learners, would that be possible? Perhaps not. Life has a way of letting one thing leading to another until going backwards is just no longer an option. By who knows what the future holds down the road, the speaker implies when he's older, he might look back at this turning point in his life. The morning he took the road less traveled, because talking about that particular route has completely altered his way of being. Learners, let's go through the structure of the poem. Well, the poem consists of 4 stanzas. Each stanza has 5 lines, which is a mix of iambic and tetrameter, producing a steadily rhythmical 4-beat first-person narrative. For example, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. So, like you see that there are 4 stanzas, and each stanzas have 5 lines. And like I have discussed before, learners, what is the rhyme scheme? The rhyme scheme of the poem is A-B, A-A-B, which helps to keep the lines tight. We list the use of enjambment. Enjambment, basically, it is when one line runs into the next with no punctuation. So, there are no punctuations between words. While you're reading the poem, you'll come to know that there are no punctuations. So, that is called as enjambment, and it keeps the sense of, it keeps the poem flowing. So, there are no stops. So, it embraces the flowing of the poem. Okay, and learners, what is the mood and tone of the poem? Well, the poem is reflective, it is very thoughtful. It is as if the speaker is caught in 2 minds. He's encountered a turning point. The situation is clear enough. Take one path or the other, black or white, but just go ahead with it. And if you follow that, life may be simple for you. So, learners, what is the mood? What is the tone? The tone is that avoid all the dilemmas. Even if there are 2 paths, even if one path is black or white, or one is older on you, just make a decision and move on. We are humans, and our thinking processes are always on the go, trying to work things out. You take the high road, I'll take the low road. Which is the best? So, something which is a high road for me, maybe a low road for you, but whatever it is, just move on and make a decision. Learners, let's take a short break.
कोविड-19 यानी कोरोना वायरस देश एवं संपूर्ण विश्व में व्याप्त विषाणु जन्य समस्या। लाखों लोग इस संक्रमण की चपेट में। इसका निदान है जागरूकता के साथ हम और आप स्वयं। कोरोना वायरस के इस संक्रमण से संपूर्ण भारतवर्ष भी एक विकट स्वास्थ्य की परिस्थितियों से जूझ रहा है। भारत सरकार द्वारा गांवों से शहरों तक व्यापक जांच, उपचार और विभिन्न नैदानिक व्यवस्थाएं की गई हैं, लेकिन अभी हमें करना है इससे बचाव। बचाव है आपस में 2 गज की दूरी रखें, मास्क जरूर लगाएं, हाथों को बार बार साबुन से धोएं और हाँ, आरोग्य सेतु ऐप पर लॉगिन अवश्य करें। घर पर रहें और NIOS की स्व अध्ययन सामग्री से पढ़ते रहें। आपके लिए PM ई-विद्या पर टीवी, रेडियो वाहिनी और मुक्त विद्या वाणी पर ऑडियो कार्यक्रमों का प्रसारण भी NIOS द्वारा किया जा रहा है। आपसे एक ही अनुरोध है, जब भी छींकें, मुंह और नाक को ढकना ना भूलें, भीड़ भाड़ में जाने से बचें और सामाजिक दूरी का पालन करें। और एक बात, जब तक वैक्सीन नहीं आती तब तक मास्क को ही वैक्सीन समझें। साफ रहें, स्वच्छ रहें और स्वस्थ रहें। 2 गज दूरी, मास्क है जरूरी। किसी भी आपदा की स्थिति में संपर्क करें टोल फ्री नंबर 1075 011 23978046। ईमेल करें ncov2019@gov.in।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने,
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। हम
अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो,
धन साधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े, वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो।
मित्रों हम उठे और जागे,
मंजिल आने की ध्वनि सुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने।
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
राष्ट्रीय मुक्त विद्यालय का है द्वार खुला सबकी खातिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर। दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बहुत,
कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने। हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने। कोई मन चाहा
Learners, let's go back few slides and let's repeat and revise the lesson once more. So learners, what is the mood and tone of the poem, The Road Not Taken? Willis, this poem is reflective and it's a very thoughtful poem. It's as if the speaker is caught in two minds. He's encountered a turning point. The situation is clear enough. Take one path or another, black or white, but go ahead, do it. Life is simple that way. We are human and our thinking processes are always on the go, trying to work things out. You take the high road, I'll take the low road. Which is the best? So the tone of the poem is meditative. As this person stands looking at the two options, he is weighing the pros and cons in a quiet, studied manner. The situation demands a serious approach, for who knows what the outcome will be. All the speaker knows is that he prefers the road less traveled, perhaps because he enjoys solitude and believes that it is, why does the poet, learners, why does he choose the road less traveled? It might be that he enjoys his solitude and believes that it is important to choose the path which is less explored. Whatever the reason is, once committed, he'll be more than likely never look back. On reflection, however, taking the road because it was grassy and wanted wear has made all the difference in the world, learners. Learners, let's go through some poetic devices used in the poem. Well, in the poem, the poet majorly uses metaphor. But learners, what do you understand by what is the figurative meaning of the poem? Frost uses the road as a metaphor for life. He portrays our lives as a path we are all walking along towards an undetermined destination. Then the poet reaches a fork in the road. The fork is a metaphor for a life-altering choice in which a compromise is not possible. The traveler must go one way or the other. The descriptions of each road, one bends under the undergrowth and the other is just as fair, indicates to the reader that when making a life-altering decision, it is impossible to see where that decision will lead. At the moment of decision making, both roads present themselves equally. Thus, the choice of which to go down is essentially a toss-up, a game of chance. The metaphor is activated and life offers two choices. Both are valid, but the outcomes could be vastly different. Existentially speaking, which road to take? The speaker is in two minds. He wants to travel both and is sorry he cannot, but this is physically impossible. Learners, what is the literal meaning of the poem? Literally, the road not taken tells the story of a man who reaches a fork in the road and randomly chooses to take one and not the other. Learners, what is the symbolism of the poem, The Road Not Taken? The road itself symbolizes the journey of life, and the image of a road forking off into two paths symbolizes choices. As for color, Frost describes the forest as yellow wood. Yellow can be considered a middle color, something in between being, something between and unsure of itself. This sets the mood of indecision that is characterized by the language of the poem. Frost also mentions the color black in the lines. Clearly, this is to emphasize that both roads appear untouched, not having been tarnished by the foot of a previous traveler. The poet is the first to encounter this dilemma. Learners, what is the point of view of The Road Not Taken? The point of view Learners, what is the point of view? The point of view is of the traveler who, walking along a single path, encounters a fork in the road and stops to contemplate which path he should follow. Learners, let's go through some constituents of the poem, like stanzas. What are stanzas in a poem? So basically, a stanza is a poetic form of a fixed number of lines. In this poem, there are 4 stanzas, which each stanza having 5 verses or 5 lines. Rhyme scheme, like I have discussed before, the rhyme scheme of the poem is AB, AAB. Now learners, what are literary devices used in the poem? Well, literary devices explain the hidden meanings of a literary text or poem. The use of literary devices is intended to bring richness and clarity to the text with different meanings. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost is also filled with important undertones with the following literary devices. For example, metaphor. A metaphor is an implicitly made comparison between 2 seemingly unlike things. Metaphor is probably, in the poem, it's the most obvious example of figurative language. The metaphor applies throughout the entire poem, which makes it an extended metaphor. The road in the poem, for example, like, the first line, the word road in the poem is a metaphor and the paths we take through it. The fork in the road is a metaphor for the choices we must make as we have to navigate our path. Within the larger extended metaphor are the smaller ones. For example, in line 4 and 5, the road becomes a metaphor for the future. And looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. The speaker looks down the path and can only see so far, in the same way that we can't see the consequences of our choices in the future. In line 6, the speaker suddenly decides to take the path he has not been examining. Finally, again in lines 13 and 15, the speaker realizes he will never be able to come back to the place where the roads have split. So learners, we can read this poem as a metaphor for life, changing decisions that forever alter our path. Okay learners, we are running out of time, but please go through the poem on your own. Okay, learners, stay safe and thank you for attending this class. Thank you.
कोविड-19 यानी कोरोना वायरस देश एवं संपूर्ण विश्व में व्याप्त विषाणु जन्य समस्या। लाखों लोग इस संक्रमण की चपेट में। इसका निदान है जागरूकता के साथ